Ah, Rome, sweet Rome, we're here. Let's look for the Pantheon, the Circus Maximus, the Colosseum.
You've been here before?
Of course. I'm the Time Lord, but I had nothing to do with Nero's fire.
I'm no expert, but weren't there 7 hills in Rome? I only see one big hill. Look!
One big mountain. It's Mount Vesuvius. That must mean we are not in Rome. We're in
Pompeii!
And it is AD 79, August 23rd. That makes this Volcano Day.
We have to tell everybody. Everybody, flee! Flee for your lives!
Shh! You cannot change history. Volcano Day must happen. Let's listen.
But won't they be speaking Latin?
No, the TARDIS will translate the Latin into English. Let's listen and watch as the historian Tacitus and an eyewitness Pliny the Younger tell what happened.
In my new work of history, I'd like to pass down to modern times an accurate account of how your uncle Pliny the Elder died in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius.
Oh, Tacitus, I will gladly tell you what happened that day, the day my uncle Pliny the Elder perished. Your history will give him immortal glory.
You were about 17 years old in AD 79, were you not?
Yes, it was in the early afternoon on August 23rd. My mother noticed a cloud of unusual size and appearance.
Look, son, a strange cloud. The cloud shoots up like a huge umbrella pine.
You're right, Mother. The cloud is rising up on a thin trunk. It's splitting up into branches. It looks white.
But it's splotched from dirt and ashes.
What did your Uncle Pliny do?
My uncle was working on his books. He called for his shoes. Then he climbed up to where he could get a good look at the cloud. It turned out to be Mount Vesuvius. He ordered a boat to be made ready so that he could get a closer look. I decided not to go along. I wanted to get back to my studies. Then a message came. Friends, whose house was at the foot of the mountain, sent word that they could not escape except by boat. Terrified, his friends begged my uncle to rescue them. So, my Uncle Pliny changed his plans.
So your Uncle Pliny went from being the scholar to being the hero?
Exactly! Absolutely fearless. Uncle Pliny headed straight down to Mount Vesuvius from where everybody else was fleeing. He launched the warships. He was in command of the fleet so that he could rescue people trapped under the mountain. As Pliny's boat drew nearer to the coast, ashes were already falling, hotter and thicker, followed by bits of pumice and blackened stones, charred and cracked by the flames. The helmsman advised that they turn back. My uncle refused. And so my uncle headed with a strong wind to Stabiae, where his friend Pomponianus lived. When we disembarked, he embraced Pomponianus and cheered him up. In order to show his lack of concern about the dangers, he had his usual bath, and then ate dinner. Meanwhile, back in Mount Vesuvius, sheets of fire and leaping flames were blazing up in the darkness. My uncle calmed everyone down and then took a nap. His friends could hear him snoring. By this time, ashes mixed with pumice, stones filled with the courtyard. The buildings were shaking violently and swaying back and forth. Pliny the Elder put a pillow over his head and headed out into the open. It was daylight now, but still it was blacker, darker, and denser than any ordinary night. My uncle decided to go down to the shore and investigate whether they could escape by sea. The waves were wild, dangerous. He lay down on a blanket on the ground. He asked repeatedly for cold water to drink. Then they were alerted that the fire was approaching by the flames and the smell of sulfur. Everyone fled. My uncle stood up, leaning on the slaves. Suddenly, he collapsed, choking on the fumes. 2 days later, they found his body, intact, uninjured, looking more as though he were asleep rather than dead.
Clearly, the gods granted to your uncle the power both to write books worth reading and to do things worth writing about. Thank you for telling us your story.